Okay, so the third and final part is look back at last year, this year, an overview of the whole thing, and where things are going in the future. So, of all of the various movie franchises, narratives, reboots, and so on over the last 20 years, we're really just left with these two: X-Men and the Avengers, or the MCU. So if we look at last year and this year, the films that have come out have only been in these two franchises. There was Deadpool, which is in the X-Men franchise and is the most successful one of those to date. We had Civil War, which is in the MCU universe, and that I think was probably one of the best films that's come out of that particular franchise. We've recently had X-Men Apocalypse, and still to come, we've got Doctor Strange, and we've got the next final Wolverine film, Logan, which is due out early next year. Overall, the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, all of them owned by Disney, apart from one, which we're going to look at, which is from Columbia. Up to date, there's been 13 movies, and they've grossed a worldwide total of $10 billion. With the X-Men universe, there's only been 9 movies, and they've grossed a total of $4 billion and a bit. There are 2 other franchises that might be on the go. We're not too sure. Blade, there's been some talk about doing a sequel to the Blade trilogy and incorporating that into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So retrospectively, that would mean that the 3 Blade movies are also part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I haven't heard too much about that so far. We'll see what it develops on that side. The Fantastic reboot. Now, there was scheduled to be a movie coming up in the next few years, but that's been cancelled, or it's taken off the schedules anyway, so we don't know where that franchise is going, and hopefully maybe we won't see any more of those. If anyone's interested, and people have been confused about this, so this is my interpretation of how to watch the movies and which ones to watch, which ones still count. Now, Captain America: First Avenger was a prequel to the movies that were released before it. And so I think that's the first one to see. It's set in the Second World War, sets everything up for the whole universe to come. Now, not canon, not actually really part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I think still 3 very good movies which haven't been rebooted or whatever since, so they're still relevant. And because they might at one point be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think worth watching. The original Hulk movie, the one from Universal, probably next. Now, although it's not really canon, it more or less ties in with the actual Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, and in some ways was a better origin story. So if you ignore the inconsistencies, you could watch that one next. Then the actual first MCU movie, Iron Man, and then the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, and the Avengers. That's all phase 1. Then we have Phase 2, Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, which I can do another video on and give you all the background to that if you're interested, Avengers: Age of Ultron, and then the last one in the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 2, Ant-Man. And then, so far released, we've had the first one in Phase 3, Captain America: Civil War. Now, still to come in the MCU, again in chronological order, still we have Doctor Strange, due out very soon, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and then Spider-Man: Homecoming. Now, Spider-Man is still owned by Columbia, but they've done a co-production deal to incorporate Spider-Man into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So they'll still produce their own movies, Columbia will, but they will join them up in a way that Ghost Rider wasn't. And if you saw Civil War, you'll already have seen Spider-Man in that. Thor Ragnarok, the last Thor movie, then we have the first Black Panther movie, then Avengers Infinity War, which brings to a head all of the Infinity War stuff in the previous movies, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp. We then have Captain Marvel, and then another Avengers movie. Originally this looked like it was going to be the second of a 2-parter, but now it's a standalone movie. So the X-Men movies, slightly more complicated in that they change the timeline about halfway through the series, but if you follow one single world line, which has one single continuous narrative, that probably makes the most sense in watching them. Now I can explain more what that means in another video if anyone's still interested. So in this case, the first one would be X-Men First Class. Then X-Men Origins, Wolverine. Now there's a bit of that happens before First Class, but you could look at that as a flashback and then follow it through. And then the X-Men movie. And then X-Men 2, X-Men Last Stand, then the Wolverine, and preferably the Adamantium edition, because that's perhaps better than the theatrical release. And then X-Men Days of Future Past, which is partly a sequel set in 2023 and slightly a reboot of the timeline from the 70s onwards. So basically, everything but the first 15 minutes of Wolverine onwards is all changed because the timeline's changed. Which means then the next one would be X-Men Apocalypse, which is set in the 70s of the new timeline. Then Deadpool, which is set in now in the new timeline. And then still to come, we have Gambit, which is set in the now of the current timeline. And then Logan, set in the future of the second timeline. Hopefully that will make sense. So that's pretty much my overview of which movies still count, which ones are worth watching, and maybe make sense of where, if you wanted to watch X-Men movies or MCU movies, the best way to watch them all. Okay, hopefully that wasn't too long. Hopefully that covered everything. Okay, thanks for listening, and look forward to your comments.